If your football team had one option in their playbook, the results probably wouldn't be great. The same could be said for your investments. SIBO index options like SPX and XSP can help expand your investing strategies with cash settlement and potential tax advantages. If you're ready for a more dynamic game plan, head to betterwithoptions.com. SIBO, life is better with options. Your investments could be too. There are risks associated with SIBO company products. Review the disclosures and disclaimers at SIBO.com/US_disclaimers.
Are negative Google reviews hurting your business? Don't let unfair feedback cost you customers. At Webamax, we specialize in removing false, misleading, and damaging reviews so your online reputation stays strong. Our expert team works quickly and legally to clean up your digital presence, helping you rebuild trust. Visit us on the web at www.gowebamax.com. That's GOWEBIMAX.com, or text us for a free quote at 856-840-8343. Don't let bad reviews define you. Get immediate help from Webamax.
More rewards, more savings. With American Express Business Gold, earn up to $395 back in annual statement credits on eligible purchases at select shipping, food delivery, and retail subscription merchants, including the $155 Walmart Plus monthly membership credit and $240 flexible business credit. Enjoy the benefits of membership with the Amex Business Gold Card. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day. And that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
So good, so good, so good.
Get ready, because it's time to save at your Nordstrom Rack store. Now through February 23rd, take an extra 40% off red tag clearance boots, jackets, and sweaters. We're talking the best cold weather styles from Vince, Cole Haan, Sam Edelman, and more. All on sale for even less. All sales final. You never know what you'll find, but you know it's gonna be so good. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
Hey there, Duke fans, and welcome to DBR Bites episode number 93. We are here to preview a big non-conference showdown in Madison Square Garden on Saturday night. Duke takes on the Illinois Fighting Illini. We are here to preview that particular game. I am Donald Wine. I'm your host for this episode. I have Jason Evans with me. Jason, great interview, by the way, on Danny Ferry. I'm sorry I was out of pocket for that. My work schedule this week has been stupid. Actually, I shouldn't even say this week. It's been the last month and a half. My work schedule has been stupid, and I just cannot get out of everything on Tuesday. But glad you were able to do that, and I wish I was able to talk to Danny. He's one of the greats in Duke basketball history.
Yeah, no question about it. It was a ton of fun. You could tell it was a ton of fun chatting with him. There were, I know I put some outtakes, some excerpts on the end of the episode. There were probably another 20 minutes of them because Danny and I were doing, we were playing the little hey, did you know? Because we're, again, both class of 89 guys. We lived in the same dorm freshman year. We just, we know so many of the same people, and we were playing a little bit of Duke geography, so to speak, on, do you know what's going on with this person, that? I obviously wasn't going to include all of that in the episode. It wouldn't have been appropriate, and I'm not sure those people want want their personal lives being revealed. I know where Quinn Snyder's kids go to school now, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. But it was great fun, and Danny was a fabulous interview, and I'm sure we'll get him back some other time. He's a guy who has just a wealth of basketball knowledge, someone who spent his entire life in the game, because, as he mentioned, I mean, his dad he grew up with a dad who was a basketball GM. I mean, come on,
It makes sense, right? And like I said, I'm sure the part where he said, "Oh, I get to come to these games kind of as a fan because I mean, what are you going to write down on Cooper Flag? He doesn't need the notebook for that one. He just has it for aesthetics." And we've been saying that all along. If you're a scout coming to these games and you have to write down notes on Cooper Flag, you're not a scout. Because I'm not a scout, and I can tell you what I know about Cooper Flag is he's the number one player in next year's draft. But before we get to that, let's talk about the Illinois Fighting Illini. Jason, before we get started with the normal part of our preview, I want to lead with a couple of things. The first thing is, and we were talking about this offline a couple of days ago. John Shire was on the was it the Field of 68 podcast? Yes. With Goodman.
With Chief Goodman and Robbie Hummel. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they were talking about how this game particularly came about, and Shire gave an interesting answer. Of course, we've talked a lot about this being kind of a break in the conference schedule, so to speak, to play Illinois. But listen to John Shire and why and how this game came about.
So here's how it started. One, we played last year. We played last year against Baylor in the Garden, and it was an electric environment. Like just the Duke fans that showed up, just the game. It's hard to really replicate anywhere else. And so it started with, man, how can we get back up there? December, the dates just didn't work in December. And then as we were looking at our schedule, and I wanted to ramp up what we were doing non-conference to make sure we had the opportunities for big time games, it came up, well, what about making sure for preparation for the tournament? Obviously, I never assume we're in it, but obviously you hope that you're in a position. So it came up, well, what about trying to do this game in February? And, I didn't know how I'd feel. I thought in a lot of ways I would be pissed we had this game during, at this point, but it was a little risky, I feel. But then I felt the upside outweighed the risk of it. And so we're looking for opponents. Illinois, obviously, they have a ton of talent. They're always, top of the league. And they had a lot of interest. We went with it, found a date at the Garden, and I'm really happy we have it. Because like you said, it feels random, but I think it's just a wake-up call before March that this is exactly what you hope to be playing in, against a big-time team, tournament environment, and I think we're going to learn a ton from it.
Jason, first of all, Shire says this game feels random, but it shouldn't, because that's how it used to be, right? We used to always have this game in January, February against a St. John's or a Georgetown or a Temple or a team like that. And it was always one of those special must-see TV games. It was played in a big arena, the Garden, the old Meadowlands. We used to play up there quite a bit, Philly, DC. But I like the fact that we have this game. It kind of breaks up the monotony of the conference schedule. It gives us a look against a team that, maybe people haven't seen much this season. And in the case of Illinois, despite the record, which we'll talk about, this is a really strong team on both sides of the basketball.
Yeah, by the way, when you were listing the teams that Duke used to play this kind of game against, you didn't mention Michigan. I think we did this with Michigan for several years as well.
We only did it, it does probably your time. By the time it got, when I was in school, it was an early season game, like a November, December type of game. I still remember, because I'd always have my friends be like, oh, so who are you going to root for? Bro, I am in Cameron. You know exactly who I'm rooting for. So
you remember the tractor trailer game?
I remember the tractor trailer years, RIP tractor trailer. Yeah, that's the man.
That was a big man. That was a big man.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, sorry. I start reminiscing far too often when doing this. No, I think the fascinating thing about this is, as John points out, it's not usual. I've not double checked, but I think this may be the only power conference matchup happening sort of once conference season begins. I know there's some smaller conferences that have done some interconference games, but I'm not aware of any other like major power conference team that is venturing out of conference during conference season to play another power conference team. And in the case of Duke and Illinois, two teams that are considered, earlier in the year, and I'll get into this in a little bit. Earlier in the year, people were thinking this was a top 10, top 15 kind of program. Perhaps they've faded a bit, and again, we'll get into that. But a real marquee matchup, a game that is going to generate a lot of attention, both because of Duke having Cooper Flagg and the other lottery picks and all the success the Duke team has had. But as we get into Illinois, you're going to find out Illinois's got a guy who is a lottery pick, who is a heck of a player also as a freshman. And this is just it's fascinating that this game has come together, and I'm thrilled that Duke is doing this. I don't think anyone knew the ACC was going to suck as bad as the ACC sucks this year, but Duke needs this. This is a hugely important game. I cannot stress it enough. We've been saying it for weeks, Donald. I think this game is more important, like even than the game that Duke played at Clemson. Going outside of the conference against a very good Big Ten team, Duke needs a win to say, hey, the fact that we're beating the pants off the ACC is because we're really good. It's not because the ACC is really bad. And a win against a good Big Ten team is a great way to prove that.
And we've been talking about that all year, even when we were in the non-conference schedule back in November, early December.
Yeah.
We were playing some of those big teams. We were saying, hey, that Illinois game looms as a game that we can once again show the committee and show everybody. It's like, again, they rate the Big Ten much higher than the ACC. And that might be, hurting us a little bit with regards to how they view us in terms of seeding. Now, will a win over Illinois vault us into the number one overall seed? No. But it again gives the committee another chance this is the rising tide that might lift some of those ships that are named Wake Forest, maybe even a UNC that are on that bubble, and say, hey, the ACC might not be as bad as we thought this year because their marquee team is beating teams outside of the conference.
Well, and the other thing to note, though, is number one overall seed or not, is worth noting that as of last night's games, we're recording this on Thursday. As of Wednesday's games, Duke is back in the number one spot in Ken Pomeroy's rankings. Auburn had a game against Arkansas that was a nip and tuck game down the stretch. Arkansas had a lead inside the final couple minutes, I think. And that's not Arkansas is not that great a team, so that's not as impressive a win as Auburn has had lately, and so Duke has pulled ahead of Auburn in Pomeroy's rankings. It's also worth noting that Alabama lost badly to Missouri. By the way, shout out Mark Mitchell, former Duke.
31. You see that? 31
points.
Only had 1-3. Like 31 points and 1-3. Like Mark Sears had 35. He was excellent too, but he was hitting a lot from deep. Mark Mitchell was getting to the free throw line and he was making inside shots. I think he was 10 for 12 from inside the 3-point line. Terrific for him.
Yeah, but I was going to say Missouri hung 110 on Alabama. Right. Alabama's terrible defensively. Alabama's one of those teams that was, right around Duke, maybe a little bit ahead of, so.
And they've lost 2 in a row, right? Because they lost to Auburn over the weekend.
Yeah. Those results matter in terms of Duke's seeding. The other team to watch, I think, is Florida in there. But this Illinois game would go a long way towards saying, what a lot of people have believed for a long time, which is that Auburn and Duke are on a different level than the rest of the country. So let's go get a double-digit win against Illinois and cement that story.
Also, look out for Houston. Houston is third in KenPom, and they're in that 35-point whatever range. Just underneath Auburn and Duke. So, they're a team to look out for as well. But, Jason, as we shift to Illinois, the one thing when we talk about their record, you mentioned they're a team that started out the season as one of the stronger teams in college basketball, but have fallen off recently. Before I get to the wins, I should note that Illinois, you thought we were sick all season. They have been very sick to the point where they played Wisconsin on Tuesday, and after that game, they didn't even do the handshake line, because they were so sick and they were so worried about transferring whatever they have to Wisconsin. Now, me and you were kind of joking, like they played a whole game. Like what are they worried about at this point? But it goes to show you how sick they were. They had guys who had to drive themselves to the game. The game was in Wisconsin, by the way. They had guys who did not make the team flight. They had guys who got sick during warmups and couldn't play. We'll talk about some of those guys, but that they are battling something, and that is definitely affecting how they are going to play entering this game, because they don't know who's going to be really at 100% on Saturday.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, I think the result against Wisconsin showed that they were battling something, because it was a close game at the half. Wisconsin was leading by 6 at halftime against Illinois, and then Illinois completely ran out of gas in the second half. They lost by 21. This was a game where they got killed on the boards, where they committed a bunch of turnovers. And those are two things that show up when you're fatigued, battling for a rebound, taking care of the ball, having that kind of focus. Those are things that start to go away because of the fatigue. And by the way, you'll hear as I discuss this Illinois team, those are things that are not characteristic of this Illinois club. And I think you can chalk a lot of that up to everybody on that club, even the guys who played, just feeling a little bit under the weather. And so the big question becomes, do they feel better? Are they, fully healthy, a few days later playing Duke?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into the record. 17-10 overall this year, 9-8 in the Big Ten. And as I mentioned, they've had a really tough schedule. They have top 100 wins against Arkansas, Wisconsin, Missouri, Oregon, Washington, Penn State, Indiana, Northwestern, Ohio State, Minnesota, and UCLA. All of those pretty good teams, with the exception maybe of Minnesota, who's kind of further down towards the 100 line. They don't have any bad losses. They've lost to Michigan State twice. They lost to Alabama, Tennessee, USC, Northwestern, Maryland, Nebraska, Rutgers, and that game that you mentioned, Jason, on Tuesday against Wisconsin. They've only played 6 games against teams ranked lower than 85th in KenPom. So their schedule is loaded with teams that are very, very good, or at least decent. But they've struggled against some of those teams. Against Q3 and Q4 teams, they're 7-0, right? I just mentioned 6 of those teams were lower than 85th. Against Quad 1 and Quad 2 teams, they are 10-10. So that is how it's weird thing where despite the record being 17-10, despite them being just over 500 in the Big Ten, the computers say this is a very strong team. They're 21st in KenPom. They're 20th in the net because of the caliber of schedule that they've played. And again, they've beaten a lot of those teams and they've struggled against some of those teams for various reasons. So Jason, let's get into the analytics, both offense and defense. They're probably a little bit better on offense. So why don't you start there?
Yeah, it sounds good. And by the way, I heard you correctly. They have 10 Quad 1 wins. I mean, that is really impressive.
Quad 1 and Quad 2. They're 10-10 against Quad 1 and Quad 2 combined. So I think it's still like 8. I think they're like 8-7 or something like that against Quad 1. So they've had a lot of Quad 1 games.
Yeah. So facing a team the quality of Duke is not going to be something unusual for them. They are a team, Illinois, that is currently 21st, number 21 in KenPom. But as I said earlier, that doesn't really tell the story. I checked Bart Torvik's ratings, which are, efficiency ratings fairly similar to KenPom. And from the start of the season through January 8th, Illinois was the number 4 team in the country, according to Bart Torvik's rankings. That's way up there. It was Auburn, Houston, Duke, and then Illinois on January 8th. Well, they were 12-3 at the time. Everyone thought they were going to be a major contender to win the Big Ten. Since then, they're just 5-7. Torvik says they played like the number 32 team in the land. Not bad. 32 is not awful by any stretch of the imagination. But again, this was a team that was ranked in the top 5, back in early January. And it's worth noting that the place where they really showed the major decline has been the defense. During that stretch, that 5-7 stretch that they're on right now, their D has been rated 72nd in the country, which is just not befitting a team that's going to really contend for a national title, which is what Illinois thought they had earlier in the year. On the season overall, as you mentioned, they're better on offense than defense. 16th on offense, according to Ken Pomeroy, 31st on defense. They are a team that really uses their height to their advantage on offense. They're one of the biggest teams that Duke's going to face all year. They've got a 7-footer in the middle, but more than that, they got a bunch of 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" guys surrounding him. It's very similar in terms of size to what Duke has. They got 1 or 2 guys that are a little bit smaller, but most of those guys who are out there are going to be guys who can look Duke's big team right in the eye. They are very good at getting shots in close, getting in the lane, getting, high percentage shots. They hit 57% of their 2-point field goals. That's a big number. 57% from 2 is a big, big number. And when they miss, they grab offensive rebounds. Their offensive rebounding rate, Illinois, is better than 36%. That's top 20 in the land. But despite that size and success at 2-pointers, I just described a team great at taking 2-point shots, great at offensive rebounds. I'm now going to tell you that Illinois is a team that loves to shoot from three. These things, they almost don't make sense. They take more than 47% of their shots from 3-point range. That's even more than Duke does. It's close. But we talk about this Duke team shooting a lot from three. Illinois shoots from three even more than Duke does. But here's the bad part for Illinois. They only hit 31% of their shots from long range, which is not it's not like it's a horrible number, but believe me, they would way rather be in the mid.
It is given the number of shots that they take from three.
Yeah. It's and especially given that they hit 57% of their twos. They need to be up 34, 35% on their threes to make it worthwhile based on what they do from two. But they love shooting those 3-pointers. On defense, a couple things jump out about them. First of all, terrible. I mean, Illinois is awful at forcing turnovers. They are 357 in the land at defensive turnover rate. There are only 364 teams. It's almost unfathomable that a team as good as Illinois could be that bad at forcing turnovers. They don't get steals at all, but they're outstanding at defending on inside. They hold opponents to just 44.5% on their 2-point field goals. That's a very, very low number on 2-point field goals. 10th best in college basketball, their 2-point field goal defense. And ordinarily, you might think that would open things up for teams to shoot threes. Like, okay, Illinois is going to be this team that stops you on the inside, but they give you stuff on the outside. That's not the case. They only allow teams to shoot a three about 30% of the time, the third lowest 3-point field goal rate in the country. One of the big battles in this game is going to be, will Duke be able to get guys open from three? Because Illinois, I talked about their length. I talked about their size. They use that to prevent teams from taking 3-pointers. And teams only hit about 31% of their threes against Illinois, which is another very strong number. If their turnover numbers weren't so awful, this would be one of the better defenses in the country. I already noted, by the way, earlier that they're great on offensive rebounds, top 20. They're also top 20 at defensive rebounds. This may be the best rebounding team that Duke faces all year. And again, hearkening back to what we said about that game against Wisconsin, they struggled to rebound in that game, I think, because of all the illness that was affecting the team. So really interesting situation happening here with them. When healthy, Illinois is a team that dominates on the boards, and that's going to be a huge point of emphasis, I think, for Duke in this contest against them. And I think it's going to be one of the ways that you'll be able to see whether or not this Illinois team is feeling healthy.
Illinois averages 43.8 rebounds per game. That is third in Division I basketball. That's both on offense and defense. So, rebounding is going to be a big key. We will talk about that and the players. But let's first take a quick break. So we'll be right back.
All right, Duke fans, are you ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating, well, easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you.
And these meals are fantastic. They're delicious, nutritious, and they're easy to prep when you're on the go or have a really packed schedule like Jason and I do. And Jason, they have over 40 options on the menu each week, so it's easy to find something that meets your goals, whether it's being calorie smart, protein plus, or following a keto diet.
That's right. Eat smarter with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code FACTORPODCAST to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FACTORPODCAST at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box.
Hey guys, want better performance in all areas of your life? If the answer to the above question is yes, try Joy Mode Daily to support healthier blood flow, improved heart health, and enhance your athletic performance. Expertly formulated and backed by science, it's proven to improve performance by 50% in just 60 days.
That's right. All you do is simply mix a booster pack with water, and you'll feel the effects within 45 minutes. Take control with Joy Mode. Get a boost anytime, anywhere, and never miss a beat. Start a subscription today and save up to 30%. Keep your performance at its best without any interruptions.
So if you're looking to take your game to the next level, visit tryjoymode.com and use code DukeBB at checkout for 20% off single purchases and 30% off subscription orders. That's tryjoymode.com and use code DukeBB for 20% off single purchases and 30% off subscription orders.
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. After watching this season of the HBO's original series, The White Lotus, this is the tropical getaway I needed. One more pina colada, please.
Hey, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I was in paradise. Turns out it was my Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate pina colada and Thai iced coffee flavored creamers. Inspired by the newest season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus. For the love of coffee. Try now.
This episode is brought to you by Tinder. Sometimes the best relationships start with moments you didn't see coming. Ever been on a date and underestimated the 3 chili peppers on the menu? Your date felt so bad, they suggested ice cream to cool things down. What started as a spicy disaster ended up being one of the best Tinder dates ever. Explore all the possibilities for yourself. Tinder, it starts with a swipe. Download Tinder today.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, we are back. We continue our preview of the Illinois Fighting Illini, and we shift our attention from the offense and defense and what they do to the players that do it. And Jason, there's a couple of guys that obviously are pretty good and pace the Fighting Illini, but I want to start with one guy who we're not going to see on Saturday, and that is Morris Johnson. He broke his wrist. Tell everybody about him and how big of a miss that is for Illinois.
Yeah, Morris Johnson is just a freshman. Broke his hand just last week, like you said, and they think he may miss the rest of the season. Certainly he's not going to play against Duke. And he wasn't a starter, but he was one of their key front court reserves, a hoss on the inside, a real rebounding stud. We talked a lot about them as a good rebounding team. Morris Johnson had the 9th best offensive rebounding rate in the country, all by himself. He was one of the major keys to them getting all those offensive rebounds. He's a guy that's definitely going to be missed.
Did you see, by the way, how he broke his wrist? Against Michigan State, it was on a fast break of some sort, and Michigan State was going up for a shot. Morris Johnson not only leapt over somebody to block his shot, but he did it with 2 hands. And he kind of went and, like, you know how you kind of block a volleyball swat, like somebody jumps up with the
both hands
with 2
go,
hands.
yeah.
He did that, but he swatted it with 2 hands and then landed on his wrist. He finished the game, which I think is even more impressive. And after the game, they were kind of like, "Oh yeah, that highlight reel block that he had, where he sent the ball 10 yards into the stands. Yeah, he broke his wrist on that. He's going to be out for a while." So if you look at the play, I don't know if you've seen it, but go look at that play. It's an incredible play, but that shows kind of the athleticism that he brought to the table as well, and how he'll be missed by their front court because, like you said, he didn't start, but the fact that he was able to come in and provide that dynamic is simply something that you just can't replicate.
Yeah, exactly. But let's get to the guy who's the most important player for Illinois. It's Kasparas Yakashonis. He is a 6'6" point guard. Yes, I said 6'6", and I said point guard. A stud freshman from Lithuania. He was one of the best players in Europe, and a lot of folks thought he would stay over there and just wait for the NBA draft. But he decided he wanted to play his way, into a good draft position, not by playing in Europe, but by playing against the best Americans. He came to the U.S., and he has been even better than folks expected. Absolutely going to be a lottery pick. There are a lot of folks who have him in their top 5 or top 10, somewhere in that kind of ballpark. I mean, earlier in the year, there was talk that he could be as high as number 3, that Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, and then Yakashonis was going to maybe be
Yakashonis or Ace Bailey. Like they were kind of going back and forth.
He was right in there earlier in the year. And I want to talk about what's sort of happened to him over the course of this season in a moment, but he is a super crafty scorer and a dynamite shooter. He hits close to 85% of his free throws, hits nearly 60% of his 2-point shots. Like when he is creating, gets in the lane, stuff like that, dude finishes like excellently. In early January, he was above 45% on his 3-pointers. Like the first 2 months of the season or so, dude was like just raining from 3 and no one could stop him. And that is when his stock was like going through the roof. Well, he's cooled off a lot since then. Over his past 10 games, he's just 11 for 50 on 3-pointers. If you can't do that math, that's 22%. I dearly hope that he does not find his touch again against Duke.
Yeah, keep that in Illinois.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep that in the Big Ten.
But this is a guy, the ball is in his hands a ton because he's so creative. He's got great basketball IQ. He's the kind of guy who makes everyone around him better. He is positively lethal in the pick and roll. I mean, I haven't really gotten into the advanced stats on him yet, and I'll get into some of that. But if you just watch him play, they use his size to their advantage in the pick and roll. He's able to see over most of the guys that he's involved in pick and roll on. They also pick and pop a lot with him. It'll be something that Duke is going to have to deal with, probably Sion James and Tyrese Proctor are the two guys that are going to have to match up with this guy and not let him just control the game. Because check out these numbers. This is what Yakashonis does. 15.6 points per game, 5.5 rebounds per game, 4.8 assists per game. We're talking about a guy who basically averages a 10-5 and a 15-5 and 5. I mean, come on. That is a hell of a ball player. And as you might imagine, when he plays well, Illinois is one of the better teams in the country. But he's been super inconsistent lately. Like he had 24 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists against UCLA about a week ago. Big win for them. Then against Wisconsin on Tuesday, 6 points, 5 rebounds, 0 assists, and 7 turnovers. What a crazy swing from one game to the next. And I'll just go ahead and say it's really hard to see how Illinois wins this game without Yakashonis playing, really outstanding basketball. His backcourt mate, the other guy in the backcourt with him, is Killian Boswell. Folks may remember he was at Arizona for a couple of years, a really nice player from Arizona. He was a great 3-point shooter when he was in Arizona. Hit like 38, 39% when he was playing for the Wildcats. Came over to Illinois. His 3-point shooting's been a disaster so far. He's hitting just 23% from 3. But I mean, he's capable of better. He's yet another guy that I'm like, don't get healthy against Duke, please. Okay, Killen. let's not get better against Duke. He's one of 4 guys in this team who averages better than 10 points per game. He up around 11 points per game or so is Killen Boswell. I mentioned they're a really big team. That starts with 7-1 Tomislav Ivisic. Sorry, I'm not pronouncing his name wrong. Tomislav Ivisic from Croatia. 12.5 points per game, 8.3 rebounds per game. Going to block some shots at 7-1. I talked about how Yakashonis is a pick and roll dude. His primary pick and roll partner is Tomislav Ivisic. Ivisic is mobile. He's quite agile for a 7'1", 250-pound dude. And he does a really nice job of rolling to the basket and making himself available in the lane. But he's also a pick and pop threat from 3. They will set that screen sometimes, and he will pop out to the 3-point line. He's attempted over 100 threes on the season. That's a big number for a big man. And he's hitting him at close to a 35% rate. He's not like a huge, 3-point shooter, but he's good enough. 35% is not bad at all from out there. They have a very versatile forward.
Real quick on Ivisic.
Yeah.
Real quick on him. The one thing you mentioned, you remember that guy I said had to drive himself to the game on Tuesday because he was so sick? That was Ivisic. He did not make the flight to Wisconsin for the game. He drove from Champaign to Madison to play in that game. He was very, very off in that game. He also had mono earlier in the season. He's had an ankle injury. So this guy has been really battling back and forth. And Brad Underwood has said that it has hurt his conditioning. So again, he's not at 100%. He might not be at 100% on Saturday, but it's interesting to note that because the one thing that goes, especially when you come back from mono, is your legs. The one thing that you need if you're a 7-1 guy and you're shooting threes is your legs to just get into that rhythm. He shoots a decent percentage from three, but watch out for him early in the game, especially if they have to take him off and on throughout the game because of the fact that he's just working his way back from all the stuff he's had to deal with this season.
Yeah. And look, when he's in the game, it just presents them with some variety of things that they can do because he's a versatile big man. By the way, they've got another very versatile forward that plays alongside him, Ben Henriquez, who stands like 6'9", really nice shooter from long range. He's around 35%, and he is a guy who gets hot. He's not a high usage player, but he's a guy who doesn't make mistakes, Henriquez, and he plays smart basketball at all times. And then the other person I really wanted to highlight, they've got the sixth man, especially since Morez Johnson got hurt, is a guy named Will Riley. He's a freshman, came in with a big reputation, like one of the top 25 freshmen in the land. And he's very much living up to that reputation. He's a 6'8" wing with really long arms and legs. I mean, you'll notice as soon as he comes on the floor, you'll be like, that dude is long. So he plays even bigger than 6'8". But he's an outstanding scorer. He can beat you in a variety of different ways. He's excellent off the dribble. He gets to his spots in the lane, in the mid-range. He's got very good court vision. He makes smart passes. This is a really nice player. And he has games where he just goes off. Like they played Ohio State. He had 24 points against Ohio State. They played Minnesota less than 2 weeks ago. He had 27 in that game. Will Riley is this is a really, really talented Illinois team. You know, Duke, honestly, Duke probably hasn't played a team all year that has as much future NBA talent as Illinois does. Because like the other big teams that we've played, Kansas, not a lot of the guys on Kansas, believe it or not, are going to end up playing at the next level. Not to say they're not a good Kansas, very good team, really good college players, but not a lot of guys who are going to play in the NBA. Frankly, the current Kentucky team, they've got a few, but they're not like loaded with NBA players the way you usually think of. This Illinois team is loaded with future NBA players. Their point guard, their sixth man, their center. I'm telling you, all these guys are going to end up playing in the, and maybe a couple others are going to end up playing in the league. And this is, I think, a unique challenge for Duke among the teams we've played this season.
You know, you were mentioning Ben Henriquez, and he, the fact is he leads the team in number of threes taken, and I feel like 90% of them are in transition. He's that guy who's not necessarily the trailer, but he comes down the wing, and when they're trying to move the ball down, they flash it to him, and he's going to pop really quickly. So I know that they've studied that part on film, Duke has, and is probably going to have somebody ready to go in case they do go in transition. And I think a lot of those guys, right, they like to do a lot of those transition threes, so we have to really look out for that.
And there's so many guys in this team that attack the basket, and they're such a big team in terms of getting in the lane and being dangerous in there. Humrickhouse is able to sit Humrickhouse, whatever it is.
Humrickhouse.
Yeah. Okay, great. He's able to sit on the wing. I've watched a little bit of their highlights in their games and stuff. He sits out there. He's not, like you said, not a high usage player, and he just waits. He just waits. Yeah. He's like, I'm going to get open for a three. It's going to happen, and there's not a lot you can do about it because you've got to help on those guys who are attacking the basket.
Yeah, and he's hitting a couple per game, right? But it's just, he's camping out there and waiting for his shot. A couple of guys that, I don't know if you mentioned him, Kerry Booth. He doesn't play that much, but we saw him, because he's a Notre Dame transfer, and we saw him actually in games last year. He's kind of like Mady Sissoko in the sense that he's a guy that is going to be a high active energy player when he gets on the floor. Is he going to see a lot of time? Probably not. I mean, he's 6'10". He's kind of buried a little bit further down. But last year he had 5 points, 5 boards against us in one game, 3.6 boards in another game, where it felt like he was again trying to, help Notre Dame by being active everywhere. Kind of that guy that's running around trying to grab every rebound, every steal, everything like that. But because of that, he plays outside of himself and gets a little bit out of control when he does.
I doubt. I don't think you're going to see a lot of Booth. He may get one little run the first half. This is actually a pretty deep Illinois team. Even after losing Morez Johnson, they're still going to play like 8 guys, and there's no one on the team. Maybe Yakashonis, if he's feeling fully healthy. Maybe Yakashonis or Killian Boswell might get 30 plus minutes in this game. What they like to do is they like to play a lot of guys 20 to like 28 minutes. And there are frankly too many guys for me to be able to highlight all of them. It would be boring to those of you listening if I went into details on all these guys. But this is a deep Illinois club, and they're probably going to play 8 guys 15 to 20 plus minutes.
The Ken Palm, Ken Palm kind of groups people by usage rate, and I think he had like 12 guys on that list. Normally it's like 8 or 9 that is normally listed as the guys who get usage, including bench warmers, right? And this one was more like 10, 11, or maybe 12. So there's a lot of guys that they kind of rotate in and out for various periods of time. Let's get to some of the things to watch for this game, because again, I'm sure a lot of you out there, because we've been in the middle of ACC season, have not looked a little bit at Illinois. I think the first thing, we kind of harped on this earlier, rebound. This is one of the best rebounding teams in the country. We have to at least try to break even on that battle. And yeah, sure, we're a really good team when it comes to rebounding, but we've had some of those stretches, Jason, where we haven't done as well on the boards. There's been games where we absolutely destroyed teams on the boards, but I want us to be a team that battles with them, because if they're able to get second chance points, that's going to help keep Illinois in this game. The one thing also, and I think you kind of alluded to it earlier, Illinois plays fast. They have, I think, 4 or 5 games where they've had over 80 possessions, and most of their games are in the 70s with regards to possessions. We've been playing teams that have been closer to like 60, and we like to be in the 65 to 68 range, which means we can keep up with them, but we got to remain in control when we do. This, as you mentioned, Illinois is a team that does not force turnovers. Let's not help them out by being a team that plays out of control if the game speed picks up a bit. They take a lot of threes, and you mentioned that they shoot 57% from 2 when they do go inside. Limit those inside chances. The law of averages says if you're putting them in a better position to have a better shot, they're going to have a better shooting percentage. If we can keep them under 50% from 2, that's going to put more pressure on them to make threes. And as you mentioned, they shoot a lot of them, but they're not that great at making them. So if we can keep them under 50% from 2 and kind of make them have more pressure to catch up by shooting more threes, I think that allows us to make a run and win this game. And the last thing I will say, avoid the outbreak. We have been sick all year. Illinois is sick right now. Hopefully what they are dealing with is fully gone, because it's the last thing we need so close to the end of the regular season. But let's get everyone out of here healthy. We even have, Jason, we haven't mentioned the fact that Malik Brown, right, he dislocated his shoulder. His status, I don't think they've officially listed him as out for this game, but I fully expect that he will not play. But at the same time, we need to continue to evolve our defensive dynamic without him, right? And that's going to be in the form of Mason Gillis, who, of course, has 4 years of experience against Illinois. We have Patrick Gonga, who's going to take some of those minutes that Malik Brown would have. Hopefully those guys show up and do well. But really, it's incumbent on our stars to lead the way and be the pace car for this team.
Yeah, you highlighted all the things that really matter. I think the rebounding battle is just going to be so important in this contest. That and whether or not are we going to get the Illinois team that was number 4 in the nation, or are we going to get a sick Illinois that's been barely a top 30 team? If we get the number 4 team, this is going to be a nip and tuck, really close contest. If not, you could see Duke put up another very, very impressive win. I like it when Duke gets tested. I think it's important for us. I'm perfectly comfortable for us spanking Illinois by double digits, though.
Well, yeah, same here. And I think the last thing I'll note with this is it's a different style of play, right? The Big Ten is a different animal. You'll see a little bit more physicality, something that we really haven't had to deal with as much during the ACC season. We've had times, obviously, where teams do that, but the Big Ten, it's every game. Every team is physical. Every team provides that dynamic. And so I'm fully confident that we have a team that's ready to take this test, right? This kind of pop quiz in the middle of the season. So I'm really looking forward to Saturday. I wish I could go. I know it's at the Garden, and normally I'm in the road there, but as I said, it's been a busy month for work and trying to save up for hopefully a long tournament run. But Jason, anything else before we get up out of here?
Yeah, last thing. First of all, I wanted to mention that Ken Pomeroy's computer, his efficiency, expert, so to speak, predicts that Duke wins this game 82-73. And then I wanted to just very quickly say, as you just mentioned, it's in the Garden. It's on a neutral floor against a team that we're not familiar with from another conference. This is your March preview for the Blue Devils. This is absolutely the kind of team that you would expect to face in the Sweet 16, in the kind of atmosphere you would expect to get in a Sweet 16 game. You know, everything about it just stinks of that kind of situation. And it's important, I think, for our young freshmen. We've got a lot of experienced guys, but we also rely on a bunch of young guys to be reminded of what that is like, of playing in a neutral arena. All the lights and the such of Broadway, so to speak, right outside your door. I think John Shire, as he said earlier in the program, really, really smart that he scheduled this.
Yeah, and I will also say, Jason, you mentioned that Sweet 16 atmosphere. Guess where we want to be? We want to be in the Sweet 16 with a chance to play for the Elite Eight, with a chance to go to the Final Four. The venue that we want to be in, right down the road in Newark. So this is an opportunity for us to kind of get that feel of heading to New York on a business trip, objective, going 1-0 on Saturday night. This game, 8 p.m. Saturday night, it is on Big Fox. It's not on any of the ESPNs. It's on Big Fox. So turn on your TV. It will be on there. We will leave it here on this episode of DBR Bites. We will be back at some point after the game, probably on Sunday, to recap it all. Get your headlines in dbrpodcast@gmail.com. So for Jason, I am Donald, and this is the Duke Band. They are playing us out, and they're taking us to the Garden.